We're going to get more testimonials with today's amazing special guest, John Hubbard.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pro Writing Aid. Every word I write needs to be perfect. One typo in an email and I get dozens of replies pointing it out and saying, "Thought you're an author." That's why I trust Pro Writing Aid. I have every plugin and feature they offer to check my blog posts and when I'm writing offline. No other tool even comes close. Score a lifetime license at servemaster.com/Pro Writing Aid.
Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss, and start living your retirement dreams now, then you come to the right place. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast Show, where you will learn how to use artificial intelligence to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host. Now, I'm very passionate about testimonials because they're so hard to get because it feels so uncomfortable, because it always reminds me of when I was in high school and you have to get 3 letters of recommendation for teachers and then they seal the letter and you don't know if one of them's poisoned the envelope, and you're like, it feels like playing Game of Clue where your entire life can get ruined. And I had a friend who faked all 3 of his letters and got into an Ivy League school. And I always thought about that because I was like, I wonder what's in those letters, right? Like they seal it up so they can say some really bad stuff. And it's the same thing about asking for a testimonial or asking for a review, because sometimes you do that and then they drop you a 1 star. Instead of like letting you fix the problem, they kind of come after you. So I want to start from that point, that fear. Like there's this fear. Same thing like when I work with authors, they're like, what if I get a bad review? I'm like, oh no, you're going to. Like every book has a bad review. There's no book with only good reviews in the world. So it's going to happen. But how do you start by dealing with that fear?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about testimonials, isn't it? Is we all know we need them, but for some reason we're hesitant to reach out for them. And my experience is that there's a few reasons for that, which are all based around fear. But it's one is feeling that you're just imposing on your client by asking for a testimonial, and most of that comes from, I guess, that fear of rejection, or sometimes people say to me, hey, I'm paying them, why should they be doing work for me? Things like that. But when it comes down to it, businesses that get results for clients on a regular basis, the main reason they haven't got testimonials coming in the door is because they just don't ask. So I've come up with a few techniques to get over that hurdle. And when people apply just some of these techniques in their request, they tend to get testimonials flowing into the business, and they turn that around.
Well, let's start with that. What's one of the techniques that you recommend? Like what's the easiest one for people to start with?
Yeah, perfect. So I've got a framework that I use. I call it the Real Testimonial Framework, and it's just REAL. R is for relationship first. So this is the idea of putting the ongoing relationship first with the client. So don't put everything on the line just for getting one video testimonial, because we don't know the situation that client might be in at the time. They might have stuff going on at home, or they might have deadlines that they're trying to hit. So we want to save the awkwardness of them having to come up with a lame excuse down the track. So the very first thing that we do is we put something in the request along the lines of, hey, if you're super busy right now, no big deal either way. Just put next time in the subject line, and please no further explanation is necessary. And what that does is it just, one, leaves the door open in the future for them to come back. But the big thing it does, in my experience, is it makes people a lot less gun shy about sending that request in the first place. And so they send a lot more requests. So therefore they get more testimonials flying in the door. So that's the first kind of check in the checklist of the Real Testimonial Framework. The E is for easy and fast. And nothing makes a video testimonial easier for your client than a video interview. So rather than just saying to your client, hey, Jonathan, can you give me a video testimonial? And then you go, well, what does he want? What if I say the wrong thing? And of course, you don't know all the hot buttons that I'm trying to hit for my target audience. You don't even know who my target audience is. So that puts all the onus of responsibility onto you to come up with what to say and how to say it. So if we do a testimonial interview, not unlike what we're doing kind of here, just using a podcast software or even Zoom will do, then it just takes all that responsibility off your client, and you can control the content. So that makes it easy and fast. The other thing that it does is it gets rid of a lot of those quality control problems that you see with video testimonial interviews, like, for instance, they're backlit or they're right down at the bottom of the frame, or, um, all sorts of, inappropriate backgrounds like a bedroom or something like that. Is you can control, you can say, hey, listen, do you mind if we just move into another room and face a window, and all of that kind of stuff you can do in an interview. So E is easy and fast. R is an interesting one in the real testimonial framework. That's a reason why. And what's really important is using the word because in your testimonial request. So giving a reason why you're asking for the testimonial. And this goes back to a 1978 Harvard University study that showed simply by adding the word because to a request increased the likelihood of compliance. And they tested this on a bunch of students that were in a line for a busy copy machine, a Xerox machine in those days. It's the 70s. So they said, excuse me, I have 20 pages. May I use the Xerox machine? And they had low compliance. But if they said, excuse me, I have 20 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I have 20 pages, because I'm in a rush to meet my class, then they found the compliance shot up. And what was really interesting is it didn't really matter what went after because, as long as they gave a reason why, they had a higher compliance. The L in real testimonial framework is for a larger contribution. So this is the idea of making it more about, not just about your, selfish needs. And let's face it, they know it's for your promotional purposes, so that we're not trying to hide that in any way. But you're also saying something along the lines of, hey, it would also help a lot of other people in the community. So they're the kind of 4 beats that I want in every testimonial request. And what I find is when people just add those into that email reach out, it makes a hell of a lot easier for those testimonials to start flowing into the business.
You brought up some things that are very interesting to me, because when people ask me for a testimonial, it's a whole production. You can see I got the whole jazz behind me. This only works when I'm shooting at night. I have to, because it's too bright in the window. So I have to say, oh, I have to do a certain time, or I have to be outside, and you want your hair to look right, and you want to shave, or if you're a lady, you want to look nice, whatever it is, right? Like there's all these other elements. And if you get distracted, so sometimes people have to ask me 10 or 20 times. And they're like, I'm sorry, I'm bothering you. No, I just keep forgetting. I write it down my note card, but it's not the right time. Things happen. And there's that issue, right? That it's like, well, I want to be ready for it. So you want to do a really good job, because nobody wants to be the person. And this is me. I'm on a few big companies' homepages with videos I made. And I watched that video. I'm like, oh, I wish it was just like 10% better. Like I do my best, but like now I have better lighting, get better audio. So you always want to be your best. And that's what a lot of people, and I get tons of video testimonials that are so unusable. Like there's no sound, or the person says something you just can't include. They use a potty word or whatever. So it's a very good idea about the kind of making it interactive. It makes it more likely to happen, because most of the time when I don't do it, it's forgetfulness. I'm really busy. I get so many emails, so many messages. If you saw how many messages are in my podcast inbox, I just stopped opening it. So I'm on a vacation for a month, and it's so many messages. Like I can't even deal with them. Like it's a whole day of work. So it's usually that. A lot of times we assume when someone doesn't respond to a message, especially when we're asking for something, that it's like a massive rejection. Yes. 99% of the time, it's they didn't see the email, right? Or they got distracted, right? Especially when it's a big ask. So I think that's really helpful to go, let's just make it in real time. And then if you remove the performance, right? Oh, I have to do a great testimony. What's the right thing to say? And it's always tricky, because you go, what do you want me to say? They go, just be yourself, because they can't tell you exactly what to say, because it starts to get into murky waters, right? What it's funny, because I ordered something, it came in the mail today, and they were like, if you follow us, make a video and leave a 5-star review, and then post a video of all of that to our Facebook page, we'll give you a nickel. And I was like, wow, that's like, I guess it must work on somebody, but it was like such a, I'm used to the $5 Starbucks gift card. I'm like, well, I don't go to Starbucks. It's just like, I get those offers all the time. And we're so used to that. That's so many big company strategies is like, let's offer something really low value to a huge number of people and try and incentivize them to give. And especially when they say it has to be a 5-star review. I know you're not supposed to do that, but that's out there. And so there is this kind of thing that poisons the well. And I think it's the same reason we're afraid to do outreach at all, because we've all had a lot of bad outreach. I get so much bad outreach, right? Like, you always know your podcast hits a certain point where you start to get like 10 requests a day from like just getting machine gunned in from people in completely different industries, whatever. And it's like, it does make you gun shy about reaching out to other people. So I think there's a lot of
Yes.
these challenges. So this is very interesting to me, the idea of just making the interview have the right questions. Because I've tried a lot of different techniques. You're like, sometimes you have like, I've tried the thing, you have automated video question, then they reply with the video, then you video next question appears and stuff. And that's okay. Right. That got me some okay stuff. Then you got to parse it. But it's very, sometimes they say something like, can you re-say that without that in it or this in it? Right. Because it makes sense. So this is all very, very interesting to me. What do you think is like the right process? So let's say you ask someone, hey, do you think you do a testimony? And there's just no reply.
If there's no reply, I guess it depends. It all comes down. I guess the basis we're working off is, did we get the result for the person in the first place? Then there's automatically a reciprocity that kind of takes place there and people, in my experience, want to help you and they understand you using it for your promotional purposes. It's more around, are you making it easy for them to provide the testimonial? But yes, there's going to be people that aren't in the circumstances aren't right, or they're just too busy. But I would maybe reach out once or twice more, and after that, I would probably leave it alone, to be honest. And I'm hoping that for most people, there'd be, plenty of fish in the sea. There's other people that they've got big results for. The other thing is, sometimes you can reach out for a testimonial too early, because if you think of the spectrum of okay testimonial to outstanding testimonial, the outstanding testimonials have got a couple of elements, and I can talk through this in more detail. But top of the list is there's a big result. There's a big quantifiable result there. It's not just a pleasantry about how good Jonathan is or how much I like the course. It's something that came out of that. I started my online business within 6 weeks. It's a nice quantifiable result. And that's, if I'm someone in the audience, a prospect, and I'm watching that and I want that result, then that's really engaging to me. That's what's got me paying attention. So that's top of the list, is quantifiable result. So sometimes it doesn't pay to reach out too early. It actually pays to do the work, get the result with the client, and then, put in the testimonial request.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Sometimes I was looking at something recently and all of the reviews were like, I just got this, seems great, haven't tried it yet. And I'm like, that's so yes. And I saw like a whole bunch of those. And I was like, this is very, very unhelpful, right? Like, I'm hopeful that it will work. I'm like, this is the same as reviewing it before. Might as well write the review before it arrives, right? Like, there's a lot of that. But the thing is, that's when the people are the most excited. And so part of it is like, when do I hit people on the excitement arc? Because once you complete a project for someone, sometimes you just never hear from them again. Like, the job is done, and then like suddenly you go from very important to them to you've hit the milestone, and they get really unresponsive. And so you go, do I want to hit people when they're the most excited, which is usually like a few days into a course, then they're most likely to shoot a video or do whatever because they're so excited. Most of the time, if I go through a program and I get results, I might not get results for 6 or 12 months. Most things take time. Like, hate to surprise people with that. A business, even if it's online, takes a long time to work because it's still a process. Nothing is as quick as we want. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. And it gets tricky because if you reach out to me, how do you know? Oh, wait 18 months and I'll let you know. And then I'll write you a really good one. So it can be very tricky, right? Like, to know, do I want to get them when they're the most excited, when they're most likely to have a result?
Yeah, well, there's a spectrum, isn't there? Because some of those early testimonials that are just about the product or the mechanism, they also help for a newbie. That if you hear someone that talks to a fear or a pain that I might have as a prospect, let's say it's a fear or an objection or a false belief around your product, and we can have a testimonial that confronts that from a new buyer, that may talk about, hey, I was worried because this is a business opportunity course and I took it on and I'm pleasantly surprised. It's 5 times more value than I thought I would get. That's a good testimonial, but it's not as good in the spectrum as that kind of, hey, this has changed my life. I'm now making $15,000 a week, or whatever that quantifiable result is. So yes, you do need both. And I totally agree that you do need to strike while the iron's hot too, and keep front of mind. And one thing that I do right from the start when I'm working with anyone is I set that expectation that if I can get you this result in X amount of, whatever the time frame is, would you be willing to provide a video testimonial? So we're setting that expectation right up front. So it's not coming out of the blue when I'm when I ask. That is always in the plan. And the other thing is, what tends to happen as someone goes cold too, if you're only, you haven't spoken to them for 12 months or whatever, and then you reach out of the blue, sometimes people tend to internalize some of the things that they learned off you, and take all the credit for that themselves. So it pays just to remind them of the results that you've achieved together occasionally as well, which goes into, there's a couple of other things you can do just to keep front of mind, and one is just having some form of regular reach out baked into your whether it be a newsletter or just a regular email sequence or whatever it is, just eliciting those results. So people come forward when they get results, so you can have those conversations and stuff like that. It's like noticing people when they post results in your Facebook group, if you've got a Facebook group, reaching out to those guys, seeing if they'll take the next step and turn that into a video testimonial. So those are some of the things you can do. But yes, you're always going to have a spectrum of testimonials, and that's not a bad thing because they talk to different people in your audience.
So we talked about some of the positive. What are some like the biggest mistakes you've seen people make in getting testimonials, posting testimonials? What are kind of like the biggest, craziest things you've ever seen people do that are just like, don't do this? It's a huge mistake.
Yeah, the one of the things that has really hurt businesses in recent years, and I must admit, I went down this road too because it's so attractive, is essentially outsourcing the testimonial collection to video testimonial software. And it seemed very appealing when it first came, and we've got some good ways of incentivizing, for instance, in a coachatives that are not monetary incentives, but get people very excited about giving testimonials. And so we did this one incentive where we put on a free training if people would give, and so in order to get access, they needed to provide a video testimonial about the current training that they were in. And so we got about 35 testimonials for that, and we collected it via a video software program thing. And the questions were good. We've been collecting testimonials for a long time. When we got them back, there was only about 5 of those that were actually usable for a whole range of reasons. One, you had the people that were really diligent and they were trying to do the right thing, and they were clearly reading off notes, so they're turning the whole time, and it's very wooden in the delivery. So any authenticity or believability about that testimonial is just blown out of the water. And then you had a range of technical problems, all the normal stuff, backlit, poor audio, mile of room above their head, so the framing was horrible, all those kind of things. So that's one of the mistakes that I see a lot of businesses making is just hoping that the software is going to solve some of those problems. Top of the list, though, for testimonial interviews is just not making the testimonial relevant to the target audience. So it's not speaking to a problem or a fear or a belief that target audience has about products or services like yours. So one of the things that we do in the preparation for a testimonial interview is we do the psychographic analysis on our target audience, and we say, okay, what's our target audience's fears and their pains and their desires and their beliefs as it relates to your product? And then when we're doing the preparation for an e-story, where's the overlap with our target audience? Because what we're looking for is the story points that match up with our target audience. Because in a video interview or in a testimonial interview, there's a million threads that we can pull on, conversation threads that we can pull on. And so if I ask, and typically the way that we do an interview is we ask an open-ended question. So we allow someone to come up with 4 or 5 different conversation threads, and then we just pull on one of those and we go deep on those ones. And often what we'll do is we'll give what we call a sentence starter, so we get a nice, clean edit point. So we might say, hey, I'd love you to talk about just that first $5,000 month you had after working with Jonathan. If we could just narrow down and talk about that part, if that would be okay. And what I might do is I'll give you a sentence starter. So you might say, after 1 month of working with Jonathan, we had our first $5,000 month. And then they would start the sentence, and then you go on just to finish that sentence, and they would start the sentence with a sentence starter. And what that gives you is a really nice, clean edit point, because a little testimonial really only needs to be about 30, 40 seconds long. when we're using it at the top of funnel, because people won't watch videos, that are a minute long and are banging on about all the intricacies of the widget. They just want to know, does it solve the problem they have, and does it deliver the result that they want? We can fit that in a little 30 or 40-second video. And so if we know the sound bites that are going to resonate with our target audience, and then we go into the interview knowing, on the listening out for those conversation threads as they appear, then we can kind of pounce and go, okay, let's go down that road. Let's capture that question nice and cleanly. And then we don't have to spend an hour doing the interview. We can capture the interview, 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, because sometimes they give an answer and it's like almost perfect, and then there's a space that you can't use, and another part's almost perfect, or maybe they say something that's very personal or individualized. And I tried, like everyone, I tried using the software, and you get all of those things, and it kind of like you get more videos than you normally do because you don't have to get in the call with people in it. But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they've started to try and bring that into the podcast market, and someone had one.
Yes.
And it's awful. It has an automated question, and it's so horrible. I couldn't even do it. Like I tried to do it for someone. I was like, all right, I'll try it. It's to, someone else's podcast. They have the question like, oh, just answer a question like you're talking to a person. It's so unnatural. Now I understand why people stink at doing it when they're trying to give a testimonial for me, because it's impossible. I have no idea what question I'm going to ask you next. How could I possibly know? Like, I don't know what you're going to say, right? People always ask me what questions are you going to ask on the podcast? I'm like, I don't know. How would I possibly know that? Because you could say something crazy. They get that. And that's what I want to talk about. Like, and that's what makes it a dynamic medium. And that's what makes it interesting. And obviously with, a testimony, you want something more specific, but if people want to give you a testimony, they want to give you what you want, but it's like this guessing game. Yeah. Because they don't exactly know what you want. So I think that it makes sense for the live interview. So I want to ask about is like the request, right? Do you say, hey, we want to do an exit interview? Do you say, hey, do you have time to do a testimonial for me? Do you straight up say, ask for a testimonial specifically and let people know in advance? Because I feel like that word has this huge weight to it, right? Or do you say feedback? Do you use the word testimonial specifically?
No, I don't say feedback because I don't want to get on a call and them giving me, trying to help. They might be giving me useful pointers about what I could add to module 2 in my content or something like that. So I want to be really clear that it's a case study interview, and that will be, it's a testimonial interview, and we'll be sharing their interview for promotional purposes. So I never ever hide that, because otherwise you really. So in the request, when I'm doing that preparation work and I'm thinking about what's a nice quantifiable result, if I have my perfect testimonial from this person, what's their quantifiable result look like? So that in copy, how we're always trying to specify a specific, a number. So what I'm always looking for, and this can be depending on what kind of business I'm working with, if it was a sleep coach, obviously you haven't got I made $5,000 in 3 weeks kind of result, but you could say something like, I've gone from having, 5 hours sleep a night to 9 hours sleep a night. So anytime you can get a quantifiable result in there is really powerful. So knowing that I'm going to ask that, I try and seed that really early on in the testimonial request process. So I might say, let's say I help someone with a book launch strategy. I might say, hey, Jonathan, I'd love you to talk about how you doubled your sales using the book launch strategy. If you could share that, I would be truly grateful. So I would be making it very clear that it's a testimonial request very, very early on. And, like I say, there's plenty more fish in the sea, and we're trying to leave the door open for people to loop back around if it's not the right time. And we're also making it as easy as humanly possible. We're saying to them, hey, no preparation is necessary. Just show up. It will be done in 30 minutes. So if that doesn't land and they're not the right person to do it, then, we move on.
Yeah, because it's interesting because I do a lot of these. I do a lot of podcasts because I live in the middle of nowhere. This is how I meet people. It's very great for me. It's the only time I talk to other people in the business in this way. And I send out, you saw because you're on that end, multiple videos saying, hey, it's a video interview. We shoot it in 4K. Please do the lighting. All those interviews come out for me, automatic ones. There's still 1 in 10 people show up and go, is this a video interview?
Yeah. Yes.
And 1 in 20 call in from their cell phone and do with no external mic. And I'm like, what? And it's even
Yes.
then, right? And that's someone trying to promote. Like, let's be honest, you're here because you hope people hear about your business and want to use your tools and training, which is fine
Yeah,
because
for
it's
sure.
also
Yeah.
helpful. Like, I choose who I bring
Yeah.
on. Like, it's not a secret, guys. Big surprise. He's going to say his link at the end. And
Yeah.
yet, people with that intention will still show up and be like, oh, I can't be on camera. Or the vertical video. Like, there's a time and a place. Like, I do a lot of vertical video and short video content. I
Mm,
love it. But
mm.
guess what? You don't want that for a testimonial. Like, once you get a vertical testimonial, you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I got to either add,
Yeah.
crop it or whatever. And it's all these little things that kind of people do, even with when it's for growing their business, alone for growing your own. So there are
Yeah.
these hurdles. Like, how do you get people, I guess, prepared for the tech issue? Like, to know, hey, I'm going to put you on camera, this and that. Like, do you send them one of those things that says, oh, set up your lighting? Do you have an external mic and all that
I
stuff?
I do, and I try and make it in their interests. So one of the things that we do immediately in the confirmation email after someone's agreed to give a testimonial, and I'm talking, if I'm doing it for a client, one of the first things we do is we send an email and we say and it's titled "How to Shine on Camera." So that's part of the fulfillment sequence. And top of the list is face a light source. So we say, hey, one of the most flattering things you can do is face a window, because natural light's very flattering. The other thing is, if you adjust the webcam and have it as close to eye height as possible, that's the most flattering height, and it avoids that awful up the nose shot, because you see so many shots that are shot from down low up, and it just looks absolutely awful. So they're the two main things, and we say quiet room and stuff like that. And then the interview itself gives us a little bit of time to fine tune that as well. So, we do a bit of preamble at the start, and I might say, hey, listen, can you just do us a favor and just adjust the laptop around this way or that way? Or is there a blind you can open there, or whatever that is? So we just do that quality control. And I personally, this doesn't happen very often. It only happened once that I can remember in recent years. But if there's no way of controlling that quality, then I will postpone the interview, because it's kind of useless to me or the client if we can't publish it. It's like which happens so often when you're using that video collection software and so on, is you get all of these great testimonials, and sometimes there's great elements to them, but you can't, it'd be a job and a half to try and edit those all together. But yes,
Yeah.
so if the quality's not good enough, or there's some and if it's a particularly noisy environment, or if it's very dark or something like that, I'd say, hey, listen, can we reschedule? Because it's just not worth my while capturing it.
And because it's like, because you're asking for something, it feels like I'm asking to testimony, I'm asking to show up, and
Mm.
now I'm asking to reset, asking to reschedule. It feels like so much ask in one
Mm.
direction, right? It kind of feels like when you're single days 10 years ago, you're texting someone and you notice you've sent 10 texts with no replies to a lady. That's what it
Yes.
kind of feels like, neediness. Like, I'm asking and asking. And so I feel like that's a big part of what holds people
Feeling
back,
you're
is
imposing.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it just massively feels like I'm imposing. It feels like I'm asking it. I'm sending
Yeah.
all these messages and there's no reply. And like, this happens in my personal life. I recently looked, 'cause me and my wife mostly chat on Facebook Messenger. I don't know why we don't text regular, but, 90% of the messages for me, that's because usually I'll send a message and then she'll come talk to me in person. But
Yeah.
I was like, if someone just looked at this, I look so needy in our relationship. Like, all these unreplied messages.
Yeah.
And that's this feeling. I was like, been together 10 years, so I passed that point, but I was like, from someone else looking at this looks bad. This looks like
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
married, right? And
Yeah.
I don't even know if inside Facebook we are married, because it like switched our status one time. It disconnected us. I didn't even
Right.
know, because I never looked, but I was like, this looks terrible. So I just think about that feeling. There's this huge fear, not just of imposing, but also of like, by the time you finally get them on camera, they are really annoyed. I know that, and that's all projection, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly not my experience in actually, having interviewed, thousands of people. And most of the time they're happy to do it, and they're happy that they don't have to come up with the what to say, that they just have to show up and answer some questions. And look, I would still say, even sending those instructions, my experience is like your experience. Most people don't read those instructions. Like, maybe couple and 20% might or 30% might. So they show up and we just do that little bit of adjustment before we start. We have a bit of a script to do that, and then we settle in and do the normal preamble of, hey, Jonathan, this is just a normal conversation. There's no right or wrong answers, and we're going to edit this, so feel free to, if you want to start your answer again, go ahead and do that. And I reckon it's going to take us about 15 minutes.
How big of a window do you give people to schedule between, like, when you ask for a testimonial? Because I've seen this is one of the things that annoys me about my scheduling software. Like, I can't put a limit on it. Like, oh, these days this week, not these days this week, or just like only these 2 days this week. Like, because sometimes you don't want to close it out forever, but like, oh, only open it for the next 3 days, right?
Yeah.
So that people have to schedule this window. So there's a sense of immediacy.
Yes.
Because I had something
question.
last week where I'm working on a project. Someone was like, hey, can we get on a call today? And they scheduled a call for 6 hours from now. And from right now. And I'm like, 6 days ago, I was in the zone on it. It was a perfect time. And it was the only time I guess they had available. But like, calendar, why do you just give people 60 days of availability or whatever, right? And so sometimes that is the thing I wonder about, is like kind of annoying, is like, because if you give people too much time, then I've had people schedule meetings 3 months out. Guess what? I won't remember who you are.
No.
Like, I use an app to tell me who people are. I have notes reminding me who you are, not because of anything to do, but I have 4 kids. Okay. There have been in the last hour 3 different crises where each kid said, why do you love the other 3 more than me? 3 different kids have said that to me. So has nothing to do with the other person, but I have to have notes, have your name written down, your website written down, not because of lack of interest, but because I want to remember. But so when people schedule stuff really far out, I go, I don't know who you are anymore. So I need it quickly. So how much time window do you give? Do you give them like, I need you this week, right?
I personally give 14 days because I might be wrong. This might be a false belief, but I think that I used to do longer than that. And my experience of people that would do, 3 or 4 weeks time, is they would be the people that would tend to then reschedule the appointment and just kick it down the road a little bit. And I think part of that was because they weren't really in it, like they'd said yes because they felt some kind of obligation to the client, So I make it a 2-week window. And when we're not trying to, for most of my clients, and I work, a lot in the coaching space, most of those guys have pretty close relationships with or at least they have a might be group coaching, but they still know the person by name and stuff like that. They have a relationship. It just comes down a lot of the time to whether or not they're in the position to do it right now. And by saying to them, hey, listen, if now's the right time, just say put next time in the subject line. If they put next time, then my client will reach back out to them in 2 or 3 months and ask them again, say, hey, how you looking now? Is this okay now? So I guess my point is, most of the time, we're not trying to convince people to do something that they don't want to do. We're just kind of rounding up the people that, would be interested in doing it in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when you said 14 days, I was like, wow, that's so long.
Right.
I was thinking that's so far away because so many things happen in life. The further something is out, the more likely something is to happen or get in the way. And it's not intentional. Like, I have so many scheduling apps, it doesn't matter. I've even interviewed people on the show who that's all they do is they help people get like, oh, whenever you have a meeting, you get a text, you get a fax, you get like a Facebook message, you get reminded, because life happens, right?
Yes.
And that's why, I mean, I try to have a business where I need as few meetings as possible. People are like, why do you only shoot podcasts 1 day a week? Because like, I'm guaranteed to remember. Like, yes. I will definitely remember that's the day of the week, because otherwise I miss so many meetings. Yeah. I missed a huge meeting last week, and the person sent me a message. I'm really sick. I can't make the meeting. I'm so sorry. I was like, oh, I saw the message the next day, and I'd forgotten the meeting. And so that's how it is. I think when you give people this large window, you're exactly right. The longer it is, the more likely they are to forget or distract. And that's why I try to say, like, if you want me to do something, ask me to do it right now. It's like, I had to shoot a video testimonial for someone who I spent 2 years working with. She's amazing, best copywriter I've ever worked with. Of course, I was like, but if I'm gonna shoot a video for you, I got to be outside in the beach, got to live on the beach. I has to look perfect. And I was like, you have to remind me at the right time and all this stuff. So it's like, I want it to be perfect. And so that meant she had to ask like 7 or 8 times because and it was on my notes for my schedule for the day for weeks. So I wanted it to be perfect. So sometimes it's that.
Yes.
And it's actually,
you want to help.
sometimes yeah, the immediacy, and it's kind of that thing is that we're so afraid. I mean, you've sent me so many messages about rescheduling, and it's like last week I can't believe this. The entire website that we used to record was down, and I was like
Yeah.
shopping for backups, and none of them could do what I wanted to do. The competitor that I almost went with instead of this brand got bought out by another company that doesn't have the same features and all of this stuff. So I spent like 2 hours trying to fix the tech. I was so stressed out, but
Oof.
it can feel right from your end like, is this guy not want me on a show? Like, and that's the thing is that it can, right, it can feel that way. Like, is this a game? Fortunately, you had tried to log in and you saw that it wasn't working from your end too. I was like,
Yeah,
what if he can log in and I can't? That's
it was
like that was
unbelievable.
my really big fear, that it said like it shows you waiting, and then like I'm like trying to log in. I was trying on different computers. I couldn't figure out why the website was down and all this stuff. So
Yep.
it's very much when we're asking people to do stuff, we're afraid to ask too many times because we
Yeah.
think it's going to create this huge thing. And it's usually exactly right. If you give people a good experience and you kind of come in from that mindset of, I want to match my promise. And that is hard. Let's be honest. When
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
closing a client at the beginning, I'm very excited. Then I get the money. And let's
Mm,
be honest, my excitement goes down.
mm.
Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, some clients pay me all up front and some do milestones. The milestone ones get a
Mm.
much better experience because
Yes.
there's another
Yeah.
carrot in front of me. I hate admitting that because I'd rather get the money up front, but there
Mm.
is something about knowing there's more money coming in that keeps you perpetually motivated to keep hitting that next milestone.
Yep.
Just, I wish I guess, matured past that, but I'm not. When there's another milestone and keep working towards it, right? Keeps you that heavy motivation. And we get so excited, but then by the end of the project, like there's this sense of finality. I'm done. And how do I
Mm.
kind of, and it's never as good at the end as it was at the beginning, right? Because reality
Mm.
sets in, and, and I've had projects go really, really, really well, but there's
Mm.
always something about it that like, and this is kind of in your own head. You're like, oh, I wish this was like a little bit different. I want to change that. I do
Mm.
a lot of book projects, and sometimes they make changes to the cover without that. I'm like, this and that. And it's like, there's tricky pieces, right? And you're like, that's not
Yes.
exactly what I wanted. And I want it to do a little better. And not everything goes perfectly. Sometimes they go really, really well in aces, but there's all
Yes.
these pieces. So sometimes it's in your own head, right? And it's like, what I try to do when I start a project, like, what's your ideal result? Like, what's your measurement of
Mm.
success?
Yep.
And when I started asking people this, I found it revelatory.
Yes.
With my training courses, I asked this question once and it changed everything about how I see my business. I said, how many people on an email list would change your life? And the average answer was 100. And I was like, well, I could do that. Like, what? Because in my head, it's
Yeah.
10,000, right? In
I
my
love
head,
that.
in my head, 10,000 is life changing. 10,000, you got a
Yeah.
mailing list of
Yeah.
10,000 people, you can generate revenue, you can quit your job. That's in my head. But so many people, what they're looking for is so much less.
Mm.
There's these websites that's like, how much money are you
Great
making
question.
per day? And
Mm.
like this scale, right? How good are you doing? The highest number was like $100 a day.
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, that's pretty good. Like, that's great. But there's no higher number, right? It starts at $1 a day, $10 a day, whatever. And it's like the highest number, once you pass that, you're like, oh, for most people, it's not a huge number. Like, you always hear this,
Yeah.
like for most people, an extra $100 a month is life changing. It goes
Yes.
from
Yeah.
increasing
Totally.
debt to decreasing debt. That's the difference. So sometimes we get caught up in our own heads about what the result we want for ourselves is versus what we want for the other
Yeah.
person.
And
And
also maybe what we need in the testimonial, because what you just described there, if someone was making $100 a day and you take them to $1,000 a day, then that alone is an outstanding quantifiable result in a testimonial. You don't really need all the other stuff, because if you imagine too, where people are watching testimonials a lot of the time in the landing pages, opt-in pages, sales pages, top of the funnel, it's often people that are coming into your world for the first time, and they're not willing to give you a lot of time yet because they just don't know you yet. So they're watching the videos and watching reviews because we all need that social proof before we pull the trigger. But short little testimonials that speak to their pain, and then we the way we structure it is in a before and after picture. So before working with Jonathan, I had this problem. Since working with Jonathan, I've got this quantifiable result, and then the endorsement is the third kind of beat. That I'm interested. I'm leaning forward if that person's got the same problem that I'm currently experiencing.
yeah, and that, I think a lot of it comes from, we think about where we are, but we don't remember what it's like to be beginning, right? We don't remember what it's like to
Yeah.
get your first testimonial or to get the first time you send out an email and $50 comes into your bank account, which is amazing the first time it happens. And then you get used to it, right? You get a sense of familiarity. It's like, oh, I get excited if it's $1,000 or 10,000, whatever, right? Everyone has their numbers. And so I think it could be the same thing, is that sometimes we forget those early milestones and we project it, but actually people are excited. So I think it can be good to see people's excitement when they have a result, right? And say, well, what result are you looking for? And they get it, then that's great, because that's sometimes it's just we're projecting our own fears, whatever, our own things inside. So this has been really amazing. And you've given me a lot of your time. And I know you have something special that you're giving away to people, or people who want to start learning their testimony process to grow their business, because it's so important. We need those testimonies to get started. Tell me more about where people can find you online and where you have a special gift for people today.
Yeah, certainly. If people would like to learn more, the thing that I find businesses value most is just the testimonial request script. So I've got a script that you can get at testimonialscript.com, and it's just the same real testimonial framework that I outlined before, and just a word-for-word script that you can, copy and paste and modify to your own business. So yeah, you can get that for free at testimonialscript.com. If you'd like to reach out to me, probably the best place is on LinkedIn. If you just search for John Hubbard on LinkedIn, you'll see testimonials plastered all over my profile there, and feel free to reach out to me, and always happy to have a chat.
Wonderful. So I'll make sure we put those in the show notes and below the video. We post this on YouTube. And this has been great, John. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of the Serve Master podcast.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Love to be here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and tactics on how to leverage AI to escape that rat race. Head over to artificialintelligencepod.com now to see past episodes, leave a review, and check out all of our socials.